Today, we're taking a journey back in time, way back, to one of the most chaotic and transformative eras in all of history, the Second Temple period. Now, this isn't just a bunch of dusty old stories. This was the crucible, the pressure cooker, that forged so many of the ideas and conflicts that literally shaped the world we live in today. So let's dive right in.
Here's our plan for today. First, we're going to get the lay of the land, a world of clashing empires. Then, we'll zoom way into the absolute heart of society, the family. From there, we'll ask, how did people actually make a living? How did faith shape every single part of their lives? And finally, we'll uncover the deep, deep cracks that were running through this entire society.
All right, first up, a world in transition. You see, to really understand the people, what they believed and what they were fighting for, you have to understand the world they were born into. And frankly, it was an era defined by constant, massive change, under the shadow of one empire after another.
I mean, just look at this timeline. It tells you everything you need to know about the constant chaos. For almost 500 years, the land of Judea was basically a political football, passed from one superpower to the next. It starts with the Persians, who were actually okay with the temple being rebuilt. Then, boom, Alexander the Great sweeps through, bringing Greek culture with him. After that, there's this brief fiery moment of independence, which is then crushed by the iron fist of Rome. Can you imagine living with that kind of non-stop external pressure?
So, what's the big takeaway here? This was not a peaceful time, not by a long shot. It was one long, continuous story of trying to adapt to, or resist, or just survive powerful foreign cultures that were always, quite literally, at the gates. So, in a world this chaotic, where did people find any kind of stability? What held things together? Well, the answer lies in the single most important building block of Judean society, the family. Let's take a closer look. The core of everything was something called the Beit of, which means the father's house. But you got to understand, this was so much more than what we think of as a family today. In a world with no social security, no police force you could call, no unemployment benefits, your Beit of was your entire world. It was your identity, your job, your bank, and your only real safety net.
And wow, was this unit structured? It was a strict hierarchy. At the very top, you had the patriarch, the eldest male, and his authority was pretty much absolute. He called the shots. Below him were his married sons and their families, who all lived together in the same household. Then came the unmarried kids, and even servants and slaves were considered part of this extended family unit. Everybody knew their place.
This quote just nails it. It really gets to the heart of the matter. Being cut off from your family wasn't just lonely, it could be a death sentence. Your entire survival, your money, your safety, your place in the world, it all depended on being part of that Beit of.
Okay, so we've got the social structure down, but what about the daily grind? How did these families actually survive, day in and day out? To answer that, we've got to look at the economy.
It seems like a simple question, right? But the answer reveals a life that is so profoundly different from ours. And you know what? It pretty much all comes down to the land.
Okay, this chart tells a wild story. Just look at that huge slice of the pie. A staggering 80% of the population was involved in agriculture. Let that sink in. The entire economy was built on dirt. Everything else, making things, selling things, even the important religious jobs, all of that was just a tiny fraction of what most people did every single day.
And life for that 80%? It was tough, really tough. We're talking subsistence farming, which is a fancy way of saying you were just trying to grow enough food to not starve. And on top of that, farmers were getting squeezed from two directions. They had to pay heavy taxes to the temple in Jerusalem, and they had to pay taxes to whatever foreign empire was in charge. Debt was a constant looming threat, and losing your family's land? That was the ultimate disaster.
Now, it is absolutely impossible to talk about this period without talking about faith. But here's the key thing you have to understand. Religion wasn't just a part of life. It wasn't something you did for an hour a week. It was the very air people breathed. It was woven into the fabric of everything.
And at the absolute center of that world, geographically, spiritually, you name it, stood the Jerusalem temple. It was so much more than just a place to worship. Think of it as the nation's central bank, its political capital, and the ultimate destination for massive yearly festivals. The entire national identity revolved around this one single, magnificent place.
This faith gave a rhythm to everything, from daily prayers and strict dietary laws to the absolute sanctity of the Sabbath and these really complex rules about being ritually pure. A person's day, their week, their whole year, it was all mapped out by religious observance. It decided how you worked, what you ate, and even who you could hang out with.
But, and this is a huge but, underneath this shared culture and faith, Judean society was anything but unified. It was a pressure cooker of social, economic, and religious disagreements that were constantly threatening to boil over.
This social pyramid lays out the harsh reality. At the very top, you have this tiny elite, the high priestly families and big landowners who controlled almost all the wealth and power. In the middle, a small group of educated scribes and skilled workers. And at the bottom, the vast majority we've been talking about, the farmers, the laborers, the poor, who are just struggling to get by.
And these economic divisions were mirrored by some really deep philosophical divides. The biggest clash was between two groups: the Pharisees, who were popular with everyday people and believed in new ideas like resurrection and an oral law to help interpret the scriptures. And then you have the Sadducees, the wealthy conservative temple aristocracy who rejected all of that. And trust me, these were not friendly debates. This was a bitter struggle for the very soul of the nation.
And as if that wasn't enough, they weren't the only factions in the mix. You also had groups like the Essenes, who basically saw society as corrupt and went off to live in the desert. And then you had the Zealots, the revolutionaries, who believed the only answer to Roman rule was violence. It was an incredibly complex and combustible mix of people and ideas.
So when you step back and look at the whole picture, what do you see? You see a society being stretched to its absolute breaking point. It's being pulled in a dozen different directions at once. Between its own traditions and the power of foreign empires, between deep religious belief and the harsh realities of politics, and between the incredible wealth of a few and the grinding poverty of almost everyone else.
Which brings us to a final critical question. With so many fractures running right through its foundation, how could a society like this possibly hope to survive the immense, crushing pressure of the Roman Empire? That's something to chew on. Thanks for joining us.